G'day everyone and welcome back to this week's fishing report. Whether you're an experienced angler or someone just looking to get into fishing, my name is Aaron and I really enjoy teaching people how to fish, whether it be soft plastics, surface lures, any type or style of fishing. I really enjoy that, and the fishing report helps you guys when you're just about to head out for a fish on the weekend. So let's talk about what's been biting around Sydney to start with. What's been biting around Sydney? Out offshore, we've had a pretty strong mahi-mahi bite over the last week and a half. People heading out to the fads have been using live baits as well as deep diving lures and the occasional stick baits around our fads to be able to find some really nice mahi-mahi. Along with that, there's been some nice kings as well being caught off the cliffs. They've been a bit sporadic over the last week, but we have seen some nice captures as well, some fish in excess of that meter mark. There's been a few whispers about as well around snapper. Now our snapper season is going to really start ramping up in the next 6 to 8 weeks, and we should start seeing some nice snapper being caught, particularly in our shallow reefs. But there's been a few here or there, particularly around a tide change, around sunrise and sunset. A few really nice fish fishing in excess of that 50 centimeter mark in shallow as well on soft plastics. Heading into the river and looking into the river, our three main species that we would target here in Sydney, our bream, our whiting and our flathead, have been really good over the last week. Whiting on surface, also whiting on bait, and I'm going to talk to you guys about a secret technique at the back end of this video, so stick around for that. Our flathead as well have been really good, particularly on soft plastics, fishing those drop-offs along that run-out tide, but also the run-in tide has been proving really successful, particularly up on the sand flats in really shallow water. And our bream have been really consistent, whether it be rocky foreshore lines, boat holes, or sand flats. They've been really consistent, and some really nice fish. I actually managed to go out and get a new PB bream over the last week, well over that kilo mark, and there'll be a video of that to come. That's what's been biting around Sydney. Let's have a look at where to go fishing this weekend. And I'm not going to lie, the weather report for Saturday and Sunday this weekend does not look good. We've got a south to southwesterly pushing 35 to 40 k's pretty much all weekend, with a bit of rain about as well. So it is going to be a tough weekend to be able to have a fish, but I've got a secret technique that will hopefully help you guys when it is like this. I have two different things that I normally do when the weather's like this. One, I normally go up into creeks. So we've got Warrenora River is a really good one, Southwest Arm, Northwest Arm, and even if you're up in the Sydney Harbour region, places like the Iron Cove and Lane Cove rivers are really good to be protected out of most winds, particularly our southerly winds. What I normally do, tip number one, or target species number one that I'm going to be targeting over the weekend, is our surface lure fishing for our estuary perch, bream, and maybe even a whiting. So to be protected out of these areas, it depends on the structure that I'm going to be targeting. Say if I'm casting under trees and rocks, I'm going to more likely be using a cicada lure rather than a surface walker. Now if I'm on a sand flat with lots of nipper holes and big, wide, expansive areas, like for example Main Bar, Southwest Arm, and the flats out the front of Northwest Arm, that's when I might use something like a Jackson Ebby prawn or a Daiwa slippery dog as my lures. These overcast conditions are also really good. Don't be afraid to head out in these really overcast and a bit blustery conditions. Be safe because it is a strong southerly breeze. Make sure that you're in the southerly corners of your rivers, but don't be afraid to head out and see if you can't catch a few fish, because often when the conditions are like this, the fish are on the chew. The other technique that I want to talk to you guys about, and it's probably the number one technique that I'm going to recommend you all to go out and do this weekend. We have some really nice low tides around sunrise and another low tide around sunset, about 4:30, 5 o'clock. What I would be doing is I'm going to go bait fishing. Okay, I'm going to pump some nippers at Main Bar. Me personally, you can go to your other nipper spots and pump them as well. Then what I'm going to do is sit on an edge of a sand flat and work my way up onto those sand flats as that tide runs in the morning. Particularly what I'm going to be using, I'm going to use a really lightly weighted running sinker rig. So I'm going to use a very small sinker attached to a very small swivel with about a 6-pound trace attached to a long shank hook. And on that long shank hook, I'm going to have some nippers. Now, over the last couple of weeks when we've had this sort of inclement weather, that's what I've been doing. Low tide in the morning, pump for some nippers. I'm going to fish every single shallow sand flat along the edges. And when there's enough water on those sand flats, I'm heading up onto those flats and doing the exact same thing. Key with this, patience. You will not get a bite every 2-3 minutes. It might take 5 or 10 minutes to get a bite. But when you do get this bite, it is often a really good quality fish, whether it be a brim, a whiting, or a flathead. All the fish that I've been catching doing this technique have been quality. So another tip in regards to that, you can also anchor up. If you've got a boat with a spot lock anchor system, use that. Okay, just easier to be able to maneuver around. If you don't get a bite for 15-20 minutes, maneuver left or right 20-30 meters and find those fish. If you don't, you can use the anchor. It's just a bit harder. You have to pull the anchor up, put it back down, all that sort of stuff, and you really miss out on that sort of stealth approach as well. So if you can, definitely, if you've got a spot lock electric mount motor on the front, use that. If you don't, just be really stealthy when you're dropping that anchor down. Don't make a lot of noise and be really stealthy with what you're doing, because the fish are definitely know that you're there. And what you want to try and do is reduce the amount of noise that you're making while you're out on the boat. So that's the secret technique. Leave a comment down below on what you're going to be doing this weekend, and I hope you all go out there and catch a fish. With this southerly breeze happening, please make sure that you are safe out on the water, wear a life jacket, and make sure that you read the conditions carefully. That's going to do it for this week's Fishing Report. Don't forget to subscribe, and we will see you next week for the Fishing Report.